This is Justice Matters with Tim Buxton, coming to you from Yugambeh country of the Commonberry people of the Gold Coast, Australia. I'm your host, Tim, where my sole aim is to share conversations I get to have with inspiring people doing remarkable work to create a world where we all belong. This podcast is brought to you by the Just Travel Company. Experience, wonder, and unearth justice, and discover the just way to travel today. Visit just-travel.co. Without further ado, here's our guest for this episode of Justice Matters. You're a giver. And so you're not doing this to I just want to get.
Oh, no.
You're doing this because you want to, give to this community of people you're passionate about. And even as you're talking about deadlines and all these things, it's I can relate so much because I've joined your community of Distracted, by
Yes.
at least come to
you've come along.
two of your evening gatherings where you talk about people with neurodivergent kind of challenges, whether it be for themselves or their family members.
Yep.
ADHD, distracted, all that kind of world of being. You need the deadline because if without the deadline, right, you get easily
Distracted. Now, somebody said about ADHD, and it's so true. Like with people with ADHD, the timing it's now or it's just not now. So when someone says to me, next Friday at lunchtime, do you think? And I'm like, that's next Friday. I'm just still working out, where are we going this afternoon? Hang on, it's in the diary, but I'm not exactly sure yet. If you're talking next Friday, it's I'm laughing inside of that. Really?
Do you know why? My wife always says, okay, so this is what we're doing on the weekend and we got to go this. I've tuned out before you. I'm like,
Yeah.
I am just not. I totally get you. I'm just not.
Yeah.
And it frustrates people.
Oh, yeah.
Because
big time.
For people, we need to plan this. We've got to let people know, right, that this is happening. And there's a lot more dependent on this event happening or us doing this than just you showing up when it's convenient.
Yeah, I know. And this is the thing too, there's such a misconception, and I didn't realise I had ADHD until the last 2 years. But the more I'm learning, it's oh my gosh, because there is this whole, it's rude. People think you're being rude or you're being, just disrespectful. And it's so not. If it's taught me anything, it's to be kinder to myself, because every time that you are going, oh gosh, I don't have any idea of what I'm doing next Friday. I've always tried to just cover that up, but inside I'm going, laughing, as if I know it's now or it's not now. And
it's just the way you're wired, essentially, and not that you can't at times have to be strict enough to
you
pull
can
yourself in.
Yeah, you can pull yourself in, but it's naturally harder to do that.
It's that bowling ball that's always just gonna veer towards that.
Yeah, but unfortunately, you do sometimes get. It becomes it's a moral thing, or it's
so good.
a manners thing, and it's not. It's so not, and that's something I really want people to understand, that it's everybody's trying all of the time, but you can't always just do those things. You can't be planny like that.
When we first met, we were both speaking at the TEDx Currumbin event.
And you were first up.
I was first.
God.
I could not believe they put me first up.
I know.
I was shaking in my boots.
And you were so good, because I walked up terrified up those stairs, and then I was like, oh, hi, how are you? And I was like, when are you talking? I think I'm fourth or whatever. And you were first. And I was like, oh,
yes,
my God.
I remember that green room. But you were so even this podcast thing, everyone's going to love listening to it because the energy and the life and the joy that you bring, you just knowing that. I just remember the camaraderie in that backstage. We're all there shaking in our boots. We had something really important. You get a TED talk to speak at, and it's what's the one most important thing that you want to tell the world? This is your time, and everyone's feeling that. And I do remember thinking, this is terrible, but also great that I'm just getting this out of the way and I don't have to follow up anybody else.
Yes.
And so
Yeah, number one, just tick it off.
the sad thing is I never got to listen to your talk.
Oh, didn't you?
Because after I did my talk, I was kind of shuffled backstage, and by the time I like came down from my like whatever high I was on from that, and I never really did come down for a few days, but I came down to a point where I could actually like focus on something else. You'd already done.
Yeah, okay.
I turned over to I sat in the audience until the first intermission. I sat next to my wife and she leaned over. She goes, "You were really good, Tim." I was like, "Thank you so much." She goes, "There was this lady. She talked about ADHD. She's definitely my favourite so far."
Did she?
It wasn't until like...
That is hilarious, bless her. And then she would have been like,
Yeah, no, she's very
her.
honest, upfront. She says it how it is. It's one of the things I love about my wife.
I love that. That's
not as
so
prone to
great.
flattery as myself, but she, I wasn't a while until I got to hear your actual, like it was like a few weeks before I actually got around to listening to your TED Talk and your journey. I mean, I think that's, this is Justice Matters. We haven't really hit on any justice notes here yet, but I think what you've kind of highlighted is the value of each person's contribution to the world and how quite often that's overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
It's misjudged.
Yep.
We haven't created a world. We create ramps for the disabled because there's a physical issue going on. But what you've done so well to highlight for our world is in creating a world, like the tagline is, how do we create a world where we all belong? Right?
Yep.
Like, how do we recognize the internal struggles that people are having, where if only we would create space for them, we would see the richness of contribution to society and how much better world it would be if we kind of valued that. Tell us a little bit in a snapshot. Okay, we had like a 17-minute or 15-minute kind of limit to our TED Talk, but people can go and listen to your full talk on TED Talks, Amanda Gorman TED Talks. Unfortunately, you share the name of a very other famous person.
I know.
Which is a great person to share the name with.
It is.
But
How
you'll discover
great's
it.
that?
Right, ADHD, Amanda Gorman.
Yeah.
You'll find it. But just kind of, what's your own little journey in that kind of discovery?
So it was hard when I was trying to work out what to discuss for the TED Talk. I remember when I was first approached to do it, I didn't say yes straight away because I was kind of like, in my head, I just thought people that do TED Talks are professors or somebody who's really, the top of their game, and then when I met with the organisers, I've met them before and I know them from just from different work around the coast and personally, and they said to me, and I was sat there and I felt so great about it. They said we've seen you a few times. They've been to my art exhibition, and we hadn't had a lot to do with each other, but they said you've got this incredible energy about you, and we feel like whenever we've gone to a TED Talk or watched them ourselves, the ones that you remember are the ones where someone's got like this heart and soul in it, and the energy that makes you walk away feeling something, whether it's good or whether it's bad. It's this like a heart connection. And they said, and we just feel you've got that. And that made me feel better because I kind of sat there going, I'm not sure why you're asking me because I'm not a doctor or I'm not I just had that real who, me, like you wanting to ask me. And once they did that, I said, okay, well, I do have a story. And I sort of just floated my sort of journey with them, and they were like, yep, do it. And so what that is was basically, I'm how I am now, like how you've met me. I'm bubbly, bright, happy. I'm such a see the good. Like I'm just a real see the good in everything. The girls at my work just laugh at me. They'll be like, that person's, blah, blah, blah or whatever. And I'll say, oh, but blah, blah, blah. And they just laugh because they're like, look at you. I don't know why I do it. I always have. And then a few years back, my mother was diagnosed with dementia, and it was the most full-on thing that I went through because she was living in Brisbane, and it was just my sister and I. We're very close, but she was sort of, I was seeing her every day, and slowly, Mum, who you know as your mum, who was like, my mum was like an angel. I swear to God, I, as a kid, used to think she was an angel. Like she was one of those real hands-on, beautiful, very religious Catholic woman. Took her, I think, 8 years to conceive. So when she had us girls, we were her absolute world. So that real nurturing mother, and to watch her slowly just fade away, I didn't know what was going on for me, but I was grieving her while she was alive because I was losing her. But then I was also having to go and see her every day. And I was, doing that full-time in the magazine, doing the music awards. I had my son, who is 10 now, he was starting prep. And my daughter, they're quite close, she was in grade 1 and Mum was in Brisbane. And Darren, my husband, was working away. It was just really full on. And then all of a sudden, one day, my sister said to me something about, Mum's got dementia. My sister was onto it. Like, I was a bit like how I was saying, like, it's okay, we'll just drive up there, we'll fix this, it's fine, it's not as bad as we think, And she gave me the hard chat one day on the phone, and she was like, we've got to do something about it. Like, and she just went into this full on, we got to do all this stuff.
Yeah, mission mode.
Yeah, because that was how she was dealing with it. And she's the older one, she's just always been, she's the boss, And so I was all like, yeah, fine, I hung up the phone and I started crying, just walked into the bathroom and went, whoa, and it was all family, we were around, we were on holidays. And from that moment, I cried whenever I could for 8 months. So it was like, it was always there, the tears were always there, and then I would have to go into a meeting and I just had this ability to just suck it up, wipe it away. Lucky I wear glasses. In I'd go, just, cover it up. But it started to, cracks started to appear. People were like, you're not yourself today. And it's so incredible how easily you can hide that stuff. I'd say, I'm so tired, or I'm just so busy, or whatever I would. And people, I'd make sure I don't see them again too far soon, because that, I covered it up for 8 months. And then it got so bad one day, and I ended up going to my doctor, who was amazing. She obviously identified it and was seeing me every week. And she would sit there and she booked the double appointments for me. She had the tissues, and she knew me she's known me forever. So she just worked me through it. But I got there one day and I was almost on my knees. Like, I was like, I actually can't keep these balls in the air anymore. Like, what's happening for me here? And she's like, you've got a depression. It's not a depression that people battle with all of the time, because, I didn't know anything about depression. I've never had anything like that. And she's like, there's people that will have depression and it will come and go throughout their lives. They're always managing it. And then there's sometimes we will have a type of depression like this, where it's from, lots of things happening in your life all at once, like your house burning down or something like that. And it's like an adjustment disorder that's part of it. And, from her sort of identifying that, I was able to kind of tell the world that I'm actually not okay. And she put me on like a little tablet, like a antidepressant, just really small batch of it. Like, she just said, it's not going to be, a lot, you shouldn't change you much, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, it was like someone turned a tap off for me.
Wow.
So, and when I say like 8 months of crying, I mean every minute I was crying. And then I'd just do that, suck it up, do the thing, and then carry on. And it was, and that wasn't like the magic thing that fixed it all, but it was incredible. So that was one of the things that in that TED Talk, I was like, I want to make sure that anyone who's ever out there going, you got to just beat this and I'm too tough for this, or like, those, whatever it was, that antidepressant that I had for that small period of time, just, it was between life and death really for me. It was breaking point.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to say that.
To break the stigma, essentially, and say, look,
Yeah.
you know, when you need help, there's lots of available options out there.
Yeah.
And not everybody needs something a little different. And like you said, you could have tried it and it may not have made a big difference, and there'd be something else you'd need to figure out. But
yeah,
I love that. I love that willingness and openness to be so vulnerable about your journey, because it kind of gives people permission to kind of at least be okay with wherever they're at the journey, or what stage in life they're at.
Because you can't do it all. You can't just do it all. And that was part of, I was like, you have to, and you have to, part of you is like, you have to be vulnerable and tell people that, because no one had really spoken to me about their journey on anything like that before. And it's funny, you know, I went through all of that really quite young. Like, I've got a lot of friends now that are, you know, having to deal with, you know, parents getting older, and it's just awful. It's the worst thing to go through. I've lost both my parents now, and you're like, you just don't expect that you'd be doing that, you know, when you've got a kid in prep and then one in grade 1. You know, you just you don't expect it. And then from that as well, you know, coming out the other side, we have to look at, you know, it's not just taking a tablet, it's like learning to pull back, learning to, you know, look at what's inside and what makes you happy, all of those things. And that's where I was like, I love art. I've always been an artist, but I never do anything with it now, but I really love drawing. And the doctor's like, you need to draw, like you need to actually take the time to do the things that you love, because you're spending all your time doing all just the family stuff, and you're looking after your mother. You know, where's your time? And it was like, well, you just always push your time aside because you've got all this other stuff you got to do. But she was sort of, well, this isn't clearly working for you. You need to make time. And so that's how the drawing came about, which, you know, I hadn't picked up a pencil to draw in I don't know how long. And I drew this picture of Amy Winehouse. And I just sat there and I just drew it. And I now know that I have ADHD from all of this. But I didn't then. But that's what I did then, is this thing in ADHD. It's called hyperfocus. Yeah. And you just lose everything else that's going on around you because you're so interested in the zone. And I did. And I just drew this picture. And when I showed people, I was like, oh, because I love Amy Winehouse. I love her. I just love her soul and everything about her, her music. She's just from another time, you know. And I'd show people and they would be like, oh, my gosh, did you draw that? Wow. It looks like a photo. It looks like a photocopy of something. And then people would say, can you put that on a shirt for me, or can I have a print of that? And so the next thing, it just sort of became this thing of, do you reckon you could draw Stevie Nicks, or do you think you could draw David Bowie?
Cool.
And that's how it started, you know. And then I was like, this is great. And I was like, all right, well, I'll just start creating art. And, you know, it's evolved over the years into all different sorts of things. But I'm actively working now as an artist because of that.
And so you should be.
Thank you. And I've also discovered, you know, those things about me, the hyperfocus and things, that's because I have ADHD, which I had no idea. I thought everybody thought the way that I thought. Like, you don't really think about.
Well, it's all you know, right? You think this is the normal challenges or the normal operating system you've been given is everyone's operating system.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. You just, it's like if you saw differently or you heard differently, you don't really know until, it's like when you get glasses and they do the whole screen 1, screen 2, screen 1, screen 2.
So it makes me think of my wife won't mind me saying this, though we might need to edit this out if once I tell her. She has dyslexia, right? And again, she's a private person, so she's not the person that would be like, hey, I'm dyslexic, because again, stigmas, right? Yeah. And it's like, but she just thinks that's normal
for her,
for her to not be able to read things well. She's like, how does everyone read so fast? She doesn't like reading books because it's such a hard thing.
It's hard.
You know, why would you? She's now, because of that, she's an EA, which is an education assistant that works with children
Good on her.
that struggle in this space, and she's like the best at it because she creates space for kids
And she would get it.
to feel like that's okay, it's normal, I get you. It makes me think of like imagine if our education system, imagine if we recognized one, we acknowledged that not everyone is the same, which we are as a society. I mean, thinking of how far we've come, but we acknowledged that even the invisible things that challenges or divergences that we have in the way we operate and think and do were implemented in broader aspects of society, like our education system and workplaces and things like that. Because when you're given the space to go into hyper-focus zone, not that you can live there because you've got to, you got to
pee.
You got to pee. I was going to say, like, you've got to make lunches for your kids' school, but yes, you've got to use the restroom and relieve yourself. You've got to, like, the life goes on, right? And we have to integrate and interact and work together. But when we create the space for people to just be themselves,
amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's part of all of the whole distracted side of things with starting this organisation. First of all, it's about, having access to professionals that are going to give us advice. So I'll try and facilitate, catch-ups where people can come along because, the wait list to see doctors in this space is, about 10 months plus. So
I know, I'm still waiting for an appointment
to
get like an official diagnosis of whatever I have. Whether I do or don't have anything, but it's like, I've been waiting 5 months already and it's still not until next year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So that's why I think, first of all, to have a space where, and the doctors get it, like they understand, they don't want to have people waiting 10 months, but that's just the way that it is. So they come along and we have them sit on the couch and talk about all of these things. So that's great. That's the first part.
And it's a Miami Marquetta, which is like an amazing venue. And it's so a perfect setting for
it is
perfect and not perfect. Because it's like everything.
It's a bit noisy sometimes.
There's always like an amazing band playing out there. And I'm like, I love that song. I love what they're doing. Hang on. Wait up.
Yeah, hang on. What? Back here.
What is she saying about,
Oh, that's me too.
But it's like so good.
Foot's tapping to the beat. And I'm like, I love that song.
But might I add, it's like whenever we catch up for a lunch or a coffee, I mean, we're constantly chatting it up to the person serving us, we're saying hi to somebody who notices us when we come by. Like we have this superhuman ability.
Yeah, and it's probably good to be able to
be distracted and then come back in and be like not have missed a beat, really.
Yeah.
Like, okay, did I need to see every scene from this movie? No. I got the gist. We're back. It's like a drama. You could miss like 5 episodes of Neighbours and still watch it. And like
you're straight back in there.
You haven't Neighbours. Okay, if you're in the UK, you know what Neighbours is. It's like
The Bold and the Beautiful.
The Bold and the Beautiful.
My mum was a fan of The Bold and the Beautiful, and I'd come back after years and be like, "Is that Ridge? Is that Brooke still in there?"
Every time I think of Bold and the Beautiful, I think of being home at sick from school, and this is like what I got to watch: The Young and the Restless, followed by The Bold and the Beautiful. But we are so showing our age. Yeah. It's like I don't know. I can't even think of it. Like it's like Young Sheldon from from Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Funny. I don't know who the heck's out there, but anyway, yes.
So the other thing about it all is
access to professionals.
Yeah.
And a community.
But what I want to do for next year, and I've been working away with some of the professionals too, is, going into workplaces, whether it's to talk to all of the staff in the workplace or whether it's, starting off with like HR or just the high management, but then working it throughout. But you know how you would normally in a workplace, you'd have someone come in and talk to you about manual handling or first aid, those sorts
sexual harassment,
those kind of courses you sign off on, those sorts of things. But come in and, I really want it to be specific for ADHD, and we might need to branch out and talk about all of the different, like your dyslexias and autisms and things like that too. But that kind of thing of not so much like, I don't want it to have the equivalent of a ramp being built for us. You know, it's not, we don't need that. It's about an awareness of
so good
who we are and, you know, the strengths. We do have a lot of strengths, but we also do have a lot of little hiccups and struggles that we come into a normal workplace and it's tough. And you are just expected, or school, to be lined up against everybody else, taught the same way, or, you know, in the workplace doing things the same way that everyone else has to do it. And I think if workplaces were just more aware of it, then that'll make it better. Because I don't want to be in preaching and being all like, everyone's doing this wrong and you're all bad. I don't want that. I want everyone just to understand it a bit better. Because honestly, 2 years ago, I didn't know what ADHD was. And it's not anyone's fault. It's just, I think the more we can talk about it with each other.
You knew what it was. You knew what it was. It was that naughty kid at school that was on Ritalin, or it was...
Little boy, I thought, that maybe grew out of it or something.
And it's
hyperactive.
It's like, that is... I feel so sorry for every boy at school that was forced to go onto Ritalin and be kind of labelled with this negative... disease, or not disease, whatever, like disorder,
yeah.
right? It's just like
yeah, and it's so hard.
We have to change that whole perception.
Yeah, and you know there's all that, it presents so differently, and you know there are the good and the bad sides of it. You know there is a lot of bad too, and and I've had people say this to me before, I do sort of shine that kind of, people think, oh God, that sounds amazing what you've got. You know, it sounds like, but I don't always dwell on the harder things of it. But it's funny, throughout my life, I've just made adjustments and not realised that that was clearly ADHD that was happening in the workplace. But we didn't know.
This episode is brought to you by the Just Travel Company, your socially responsible travel concierge. Just Travel is the best kept secret in culturally immersive and justice-oriented adventures. Allow Just Travel to take the hassle out of your next trip and experience wonder and unearth justice. Discover the just way to travel today. Simply head on over to just-travel.co to learn more and book your next adventure, like our flagship Israel Istanbul trip launching out in mid-July 2023. Can I ask you something maybe a bit more personal? Have you when you talk about the bad sides of it and the adjustments you've made, can you give an example of like, hey, how you've maybe beaten yourself up or assumed you're you're less than, or your performance is... Because I'm just thinking now, as you brought that up, oh my God, I am crucifying myself in my mind because...
Oh, you're so mean to yourself in your mind. And I didn't realise I was being like that. Even as I was doing all my testing, I sort of threw them a curveball, because there's a lot of repeating questions in it to say, you know, do you not like yourself? Do you... And I'm not like that. Like I don't feel that way. And I think that's all to do with how Mum was with us. She's really built us up to be confident and love ourselves and all of those things. But when I do look at deeply into myself, for years I've felt like, how come every other mother, for instance, can do this stuff? If I turn up to school one more time and every kid in the school's in their orange shirt for Harmony Day and there's my kids not in their shirt, because I don't even know when was that email. Did I read it? Did I forget? I don't know. And I just would be like, you're inside, oh, you're an idiot. Like, you failed again on this. And you watch your kids going, oh, it's all right, Mum. You know, and you're like, you know, many times, and that's...
I've got the water and the tea. I think I need the tissue.
But, you know, and I would plead to people like, how do you do this? But I didn't know. I just thought, I'm just not very good at this. So there's that. There's things like, I heard something the other day and it really made sense. So something that people say a lot to you when you have, now that I've been saying I have ADHD, and they'll say, what do you do? And they're trying to make you feel better. So you'll say, oh, I lose my keys all the time. And they'll say, oh, I do that too. That's not an ADHD thing. And they're just trying to make you feel better. And I get it. But from being the person with ADHD, it makes you feel like it's almost it's being dismissed again of it's not.
Oh, everyone's saying they got ADHD. Oh, everyone's saying that. They're just using it as an excuse. No, I'm just trying to help you understand with a stinking label that underneath this beautiful veneer of me are challenges.
There's some problems.
That I have to overcome.
Yeah.
And you don't have to overcome.
And the thing that I saw is somebody said, like everybody needs to pee. There you go. Everyone's got to do a pee. But if you pee 100 times a day, you got a problem. And it's like that. So, I lose my keys.
Very true.
Yeah, everyone might lose their keys. But honestly, I've traipsed my family back through our whole steps at the end of a day at SeaWorld. Like we're exhausted. Think of toddlers in prams. Mummy's lost her keys. And we're ready to go home. We're tired. I think one of them might have even been having a tantrum.
Yeah.
Got to the car.
No keys. Oh, dear.
You know, and that's the stuff that people with ADHD will tell you. You know, they do it all the time. Lose your keys. People put their phones on their top.
I don't think my wife's listened to one episode of Justice Matters. I am making her listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Because, you know, without a doubt, where are my keys,
is that you?
Sarah?
I know. And then
where the heck are they?
And someone will say, like, my husband, neurotypical as will be like, you just put it in the same spot. Like, come home, put them in the same spot. But see, I come home and then I walk in the door and I get excited that the dogs will greet me, and then I'll do something else and I just put them there. You know, I don't know where. And then it's like, where are my keys? So now when I'm out, like, so we don't do the SeaWorld thing, he's given me like the little, a little hook thing, like for your Aldi key ring, that kind of thing that you have your little token on, and I hook it on my zip inside my bag.
Oh.
So I make sure
See,
now
what
I
I
hook
love
my
about
keys.
that is it's saying, let's find a solution that helps you.
Yep.
Let's not try and change you. Let's not
No.
get mad at you because this is just how things tend to always go with life with Amanda.
Yep.
But it's like, you know what?
What can
Let's
we do?
find a solution because
Because it's not going away.
it's not going to. And if I could kind of with that same sentiment steer it to things like the workplace, instead of saying, well, here's the typical leader, CEO, manager role, whatever's important role in an organization in the business world in this. And so because you're like this, you're not really going to be able to be in a position of leadership or be in the XYZ, right? So what we're going to do is you're going to have to work really hard to prove that you can function like this if you want to get into that role. So let's change you and your way you are. And I guess this comes back to justice and equality.
Yep. Big time.
And so, you know, so what happens is it's the same people, you know, because that's the system. And this has happened with men in leadership, in being in a very kind of gender bias world that we grew up in for centuries. And hopefully now we're finally realizing we can actually push a lot more barriers, even as we've made the progress. But I think it applies to this whole space
It
too,
totally
because
does.
the greatest leaders in the world quite often are the most visionary, the most creative, think outside of the box, don't see things the way everyone sees things. Problem solvers.
Really good problem solvers. And great in a crisis, the old ADHDers. You want me if you have a car accident or there's some sort of emergency, because my brain goes calm. Like all of this busy, if there's something serious going down, everything quietens down. I get, it's like the world slows down and I become very like task, you need to do this.
Yes.
And you know, it's just, yeah, it's amazing. Like you make very good
Chaos
leaders.
is your friend.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So, yeah, the workplace has got a long way to go, and that's part of what I want to do and it's really making adjustments in a way of just finding out what that person needs for them, because everyone is so different. But say me, for instance, I can't sit in an open plan office and try and type and think and do my work, because I can hear, I'll start typing what you're saying over there on the phone because my brain's picking that up. It's like I don't have the hierarchy of the,
Yes.
It's like everything comes in at the same level. I think, everyone else kind of goes, block that out. I just can't.
Now,
So-
if you want to collaborate and have lots of great conversations,
Great.
that's where you go.
Yeah.
But when you need to get
Get
crap
it done. Yeah, I need quiet.
you need your own environment where you have
And not
as
even
minimal
like just
distractions
with
as
your
possible.
headphones on.
Yeah.
Not like, because someone will walk past. Like, did you see when I walked in here today? And I'm like, I love Mia's top.
Oh yeah, totally.
Amazing. So that one thing could spark me to go, I'm supposed to be working, but I love Mia's top. I wonder where she got that from. And then the colour reminds me of, and it'll be, that was tangerine, and then tangerine, the candle. I've got to buy that candle from Tim. Like, it's just, it'll throw me. One
Yes.
person walking past with an amazing top in the office could throw my mind.
But isn't that a beautiful? See, I love that beautiful world. It's this world of like wonder, adventure. Like it's
Yeah.
like the choose your own adventure kind of book. It's like this. This isn't going the path of how it goes. Let's just turn the mics on and just see where this takes us. You said candles. Now I've got to pop this lid. It
What
might
have
not
we
be
got?
your favorite.
No,
favorite. It's
caramel vanilla.
The reason I chose this
Yeah,
is it
it's
smells like a
amazing.
donut, or something. I feel like I want to eat a Krispy Kreme right
yeah,
now.
it's so much
We're
like
we're
that.
kind of Christmas season, so it's kind of also reminds me of in America, like you get all the nice warm candles, and mostly they're like these cinnamony, caramelly, like it
yes.
has that kind of
Yeah.
Christmassy feel. So
Yeah.
another hot favorite of these life-changing candles, hand poured in Melbourne by refugees from Myanmar.
Love it.
The reason I'm doing this plug, as I was saying, another great scent which is really popular on the coast here, is coconut and lime. It kind of smells like I'm about to go for a surf.
Yeah, that's like holidays. That
Yes,
just-
holidays.
Like holidays.
There's 7 different scents,
Is
not
there
flavors.
like a lemony one? Like how we were saying we're drinking this
Lemon
tea that is
myrtle.
very Australian lemon myrtle. Amazing smell.
Well, there's limes. There's a cup passion fruit and lime. There's
Yep.
I don't know
yeah,
about
so that's
lemon.
that real citrusy, fresh.
Yes. Yes, I
Because
think
this
that
is
would
that
be there.
deep, like it's a beautiful, like it's food.
Smooth,
It's like food.
velvety.
Yeah, caramel. Yeah.
I know we're going to be like.
Oh,
I know. I should have bought donuts because I really want to eat a Krispy Kreme
Krispy
donut.
Kreme donut.
Okay, I'm so distracted right now with the candles, but I guess the point of this, the cool thing about it is we've got this partnership. Not only is it employing refugees, but
Love it.
the donation, a portion, which is about $8 to $10, sometimes more, dollars, of each candle goes to You Belong and
Great.
the work that we do to create a world where everyone
Everyone
belongs.
belongs.
Where especially those people that have, like, again, have experienced so much and have such a richness of culture, a different way of operating, a different way of living to contribute to society, that our workplaces will be better. Our education systems would be better.
much
We
better.
love the food and the restaurants they bring to us, but do we love the other ways of living, way of life, or do we
or do we
created
not know about it?
have we created an Australia that this is what it means to be an Aussie, like, and it comes down to, for me, it's like we need to have a divergence of expression. The one thing I think that should determine whether someone rises or falls in leadership should be character, should be their and like character, values. Is this a person in crisis
Yeah.
that's going to actually serve the community, or are they going to go into fight-flight mode and just be self-preservational and inward? Because when you're a leader of an organization, a leader of a country, for goodness sake, character just doesn't matter, it seems, anymore. Like so much of the people that get voted, it's like, no, what are their opinions about this and that? I'm like, honestly,
Yeah. Get
like,
down to the heart of who's the person and
who
get a
is
good
this person?
yeah. Yeah. You need the values.
And anyways, I I don't know why I had to throw that little thought in there. But so business, creating things. You sell T-shirts, you sell merchandise. It's another way to kind of obviously be sustainable. But I think it's another way to create awareness. It's another way for people to be like, this is how I want to express myself with fashion. Tell us a bit about your T-shirts. Tell us a bit about that, combining your passion for art and fashion and that into your work, because we're doing a collab and a whole big thing to.
So I've got lots of ideas for like fashion side of things that will tie into Distracted. For now, I've got, your Distracted brand, as in the name just purely on a T-shirt, which is very understated, but that's what I wanted it to be like. So that it's almost, I would love in time for that brand to just be, you'd see it everywhere and you might not know what it is. And then one day you might be like, what is that? And then once you do know what it is, it's this real, it's like this silent nod, I feel like, to each other of, I see you wearing that and you either have ADHD yourself or you've got someone in your family with it or your friend or your partner or whoever, and it's the acceptance of it. It's this whole, I get you, I see you, it's all good. And I don't like seeing those shirts that are like, the ADHD ones that are really like laughing at yourself about the squirrel, what is it? I've got ADHD and it's like, squirrel. Like it's almost just making you sound silly.
Right.
I do like the ones that are, I just feel like I want it to be just really understated, but I want the brand to be out there of, I get that. I know what that is.
That's legit.
Yeah.
That's got, it's strong. But it's also,
it's not just really out there on a T-shirt of I've got ADHD or whatever they are. And some things are funny like that. I still laugh at all those things. There was an ADHD, one of those, they brought out the dolls, like they were like all Barbie dolls, and there was like the, but they're not real Barbie dolls. They're like, it was in like social media, and it would be like, there was like all the different COVID ones, people in COVID, and it was, I don't know, they were all just different things. And there was the ADHD one, and she had like unfinished cups of tea, and she was still looking for her keys, and it says keys aren't sold, or keys are sold separately. Like it was just all, it was like funny, all of these jokes about it, and I thought, like, I think that's funny. But as far as a merchandising sort of way, I really just want the brand to be very solid as Distracted. And I've drawn just a single line drawing of a face, and then I made the head part where your brain would be into just like swirly lines, like just squiggles.
Wow.
Just to say, if you were following my pen to do that single line, that's like my thoughts. I'm all like, da-da-da-da-da-da, and it'll all come back in the end.
Right.
But it's doing that, and that's what my logo is, the name Distracted, and then it's this single line drawing of this face with their thoughts. And I love that drawing. And so me being, I love all fashion and things like that too. And, whenever anyone normally sees me and I'm going somewhere, they'll be like, what's that dress you're wearing? Or I like colours and bright things. And I'm wearing a black shirt today, but normally I wear a lot of Gorman clothes and things like that. And it's funny because my name's Gorman. People are always like, that's weird. You're like so Gorman. Like, is that your company? And it's like, no, I wish. And one day I swear, Gorman, the business, they collaborate with artists all the time.
Wow.
And they'll have like a Tim Buxton by Gorman, and it's your art by them, and they'll put it on all their stuff. And I'm
Amanda
like,
Gorman.
One day, Gorman by Gorman. One day, I swear.
It's happening.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. But anyway, that logo of the face, I'd love to do that on a repeat pattern, just so like a plain white with that in black, or a black with that in white, and then make some of my cool dresses and, different pieces of clothing in that as well. And that's something I really want to look at doing next year, because I don't normally wear T-shirts much. And I am now, obviously, because I've got Distracted T-shirts and I want to push those out. But I'm sure there's heaps of people with ADHD like me that like to wear their button-down shirts or their like A-line skirts. And
Well, I think it's fun because what it does is it gives them a sense of pride. You know, when you wear your favourite sports uniform, like my son's out there wearing his Liverpool shirt, and like it gives you a sense of like I can laugh at myself. Yes, I can. You know, I'm not taking myself too seriously, but I also can be proud of the fact that this is the community I am, and you better watch out. Like, don't get in our way. Like, we're taking over the world.
Yep. And look at my cool skirt.
Yes.
Yeah. I honestly think that logo would just look cool anyway. I would just buy that if it wasn't a distracted thing. Like, I just think it looks cool. So if that was a pattern on a dress, I'd be like that. So
this is where I would love. I tried to get my daughter to do art classes with you, but again, you're such a crazy, busy person, and you're investing that in your own kids, and they're just winning competitions and doing so many wonderful things with that. I love that ability to be able to share this, Amanda, the way you are, the gifts that you have, and impart that into the others in your community.
Well, thank you.
Brag note. Come on, share about how your daughter is kind of, that's been a bit of a journey too, so,
Yeah. You mean artistically?
Yes.
Yeah. So I can't believe this. My kids don't get sometimes I say to them, these opportunities that you've got, like, it's unreal what you can do here. We live on the Gold Coast, obviously, and it's such a cool place. And we've got the largest regional gallery in Australia here that's been built called Hotter here on the Gold Coast. And it's new. Like, it's new in our cultural precinct. It's
one of our favourite places to go visit.
I just live at Hotter. Let's go up to where you go see all the shows, and they've got an outdoor amphitheatre and all of that stuff. Yeah. But the gallery is like a brand new, beautiful building. And, for me as an artist, that's like one day, like I just said about Gorman, one day I'm going to have my art in Hotter Gallery. Now, my daughter took a photo of me at soccer training in the winter. It was freezing. I had my puffer on, and I was actually grumpy. I was like, it was,
Those rare moments. Was it full moon?
I don't know.
What was it?
But it was cold, and I think it was raining actually. And Jake's, he's playing soccer all the time. I think it's 3 nights a week we're there. You're running around doing, juggling. And my daughter was just sort of at me for whatever. And I felt grumpy, and I just gave her my phone and was like, that whole leave me alone.
Yeah.
Which is, I felt, it's awful really, but I did. I was like, oh gosh. And then she's looking up at me. She was on the ground looking up at me, and the lights had come on. That's how dark it was in the winter at soccer. The big floodlight things above the field come on. So behind my head is this big floodlight. And she's taking photos of me from below, like, that's the worst for me, with double chins, looking like you're supposed to shoot from above, Like, I was like, oh, God, I probably look 100 years old, and I'm looking massive here. Like, I just was like, oh, gosh, And she said to me, Mum, you look like an angel. And I just was like, that's what I thought my mum was. Like, I used to dead set think my mum was an angel. And I just had this moment of it just disarmed me from being like the Gruffalo. And she took these photos, and I looked at it, and it wasn't a nice photo of me. Like, I did have double chins and looked 100 and big because it's shot from below. But from a kid's perspective, and that's my kid looking at me, I look like an angel to her. So I entered it. No, I put it on social media, and all these people were like, you need to enter that into Hotter's got a Young Crop Photography Award.
Wow.
So I did. And she's on the wall in Hotter.
Wow.
She's hung on the wall in Hotter, and she's 12 years old.
So good.
So obviously we all have gone down there and, get her photo.
Next to it.
And like telling everybody we're just so proud. Oh, this is Amber. She took this one.
Oh, my God.
So, yeah. And, they've been in lots of different art things along the way too. But, I love inspiring children to do art and to be better at their
expressing
skills.
Themselves.
Yeah.
I think, there's so many aspects of society. I mean, I think you could target my dad's just got into painting in his 70s.
Your dad's an amazing artist.
I
You've
know.
shown me a drawing of a dog or
Yeah.
something a while back, I think. I can't remember what it was.
It was a dog, yeah. I'm like,
Amazing.
how on earth did you do this? And again, I think I've got elements of this hyper focus and detail, and like when he gets in the zone, he's just like,
So,
you can't stop the guy. Like, he's in his office, and
has he got any traits like you? Because, the whole... And
very much so. It's genetic. And then his mother
it can
had
be
some
genetic,
pretty
yeah. Mm-hmm.
dementia issues as well,
Okay.
his mother. And I mean, quite a wild, crazy, whimsical person, right? And I
Yeah.
think there's definitely, you can see down the lines
Yeah.
where you kind of, and I know my youngest, August, is following very swiftly in my footsteps of getting lost and being distracted. Like, literally my childhood was one of being lost.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I never felt lost.
You were
Everyone
just-
else was like, where's Tim? And I was, whether it was in the
You were just
in the
cruising
highlands
around.
of Irian Jaya in some hut somewhere, or whether it was lost in, the shopping centre, and I just went off and someone's like, well, should you be with your parents? And having my name screamed over the speaker, and my parents
'Cause you
walking
would
up
have-
there
something
feeling
would have-
embarrassed because
Yeah.
this child of ours,
Something would have just sparked your attention.
I never felt, I didn't have this. This is the beautiful thing, is I didn't have this fear of the world.
No.
It was always a whimsical, like, and this is where
That's
I think
me.
it comes back to your positive mindset and attitude. It's like something different doesn't make you feel threatened like a lot of people. It
No.
actually makes you feel curious and whimsical and wonderful and drawn into it, and you
You
just
connect
follow it.
deeply
It's
with
Alice in
things too.
Wonderland, right? And it's like that's reality.
Yeah. And I do. It's these rose-coloured glasses, see the good, and you do. It is very much like that, Alice in Wonderland. Follow that. Yeah.
Well, I inherited that from my dad. Coming back to my dad, was he's probably the most. He hates negativity.
Because it would affect him.
Yeah, and so he's always like, now he can be. I shouldn't really be. He can be quite intensely in the drama of life, right? Like really empathic and feeling,
'cause
and
he
go
feels
deep
it,
down
yeah.
with people in their journeys, and
Yep.
that can sometimes lead to sometimes very like emotionally, intense feelings. But he is always seeing the positive in things and always looking for the positive, and I'm grateful for that, to have inherited that aspect of
Yeah. Yeah. And that's me
his
too.
personality.
But with ADHD, it can be so different. Not everybody's like that. People can be like really down on themselves. But that is definitely how it presents in me. And I never forget the psychologist said that. She's like, you're like the sparkly kind. Like, you just, like we say, like a fistful of glitter, just.
Do you feel then, when you do decide to be like, I'm just going to be honest right now, not alone, honest and sad and not negative, but, sharing that. How does that make you feel when you, like, oh, this other side of Amanda, she's being vulnerable and sharing, like, and what's that sometimes like for you? Like, do people know how to deal with it? Like,
I feel stuff a lot. So I'm a real crier. I cry like as much as I'm happy. I just flood with tears a lot, with excitement or like just an overwhelm of a feeling. Like if I was at a big concert and the person comes on stage and they, even if it was an orchestra or the opera or something like that, and you feel that feeling, my body will naturally flood with tears. Wow. It's just I'll smile, but my lips quivering. I look at my husband, and he knows now. He smiles at me back like, oh, here she goes. At our wedding, same thing. He poked his tongue out at me because he could see she's gonna go. It's just I can't help it. I look at other children singing Christmas carols. They're not my children. But they're adorable, and I'll flood with just pride, and I do feel emotions a lot, so I have to watch, when I'm consuming news, because that can affect me all day. Like I've found the things like being around people, having phone calls, chatting to people, going and having meetings, it builds me up. I feel pumped up and excited and I love it. Put me by myself for too long, then I will sometimes, if I haven't been chatting to people, I might feel a bit quieter and lower. But things like, different things like the news, or if I witness something, or because I feel like I can feel whether or not this is true or not, but I feel like I can feel what people are feeling. So if I witness someone having an argument, or I saw something that it might not even be what I think it is, but I might assume that child's being bullied some way, like someone said something mean to her, and I didn't hear it, I just could see it, and I could see the person's face, I'd feel like, oh gosh, like it's this real, like a hit to the stomach sort of feeling. And I do that all day, every day with things. That you're just driving along the road and you see something and I'll be like, oh, the kids and Darren, my husband, will be like, gosh, Amanda, like if there's a dead animal on the side of the road or something like that, I am just like, oh gosh.
It could almost be like that distraction element, coming back to that word distracted, which I think is such a poignant,
it's
perfect word, right? Is it's also because your antennas are just always up.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're constantly receiving stuff. You're receiving stuff
all the time
without even knowing that you're receiving stuff.
Yeah.
And whether it be energy, whether it be sights or sound or feelings or smells, it's like
clocking
there's
all.
it's all moving around. What would you say as we kind of wrap things up? There's people listening, they might have suspicions that this is themselves. They might know 5 people they could tell right away. This is who is potentially got ADHD.
I wanted to tell you,
Yes.
I've got a little list here. Hopefully it won't take me too long to
Yes,
read.
no.
But it's got a bit of the reality of it. It's a bit of some statistics. I got one of the doctors to send to me because he used it in his talk the other night.
Yeah.
And I was sat there and went, oh my gosh, because I do feel like people do need to understand that there are the realities of it. And there's a good and there's bad, so I'm going to tell you the good and the bad too in this.
Thank you.
But I feel like people, the more we know about it and the more that we can see that it's a real thing, because that's what he was saying the other day. He has colleagues of his in the world that still think ADHD is not a thing. It's just sleep more, try harder. So he was wanting to just give us some facts, I guess.
Yeah.
So his is a report he's got from 2019, and he's saying that ADHD costs the Australian economy $20.9 billion, approximately $25,000 per ADHDer, mostly in productivity costs, missed days, injuries, reduced employment. That's you not getting through school, uni, jobs, promotions. We cost the healthcare system double than that of non-ADHDers if we're well managed, and triple if we are not well managed. 3 times at risk of obesity and diabetes, the impulse control.
I think a lot of this comes down to not taking care of yourself either, right? Like you won't go to the doctor to get. Because why would you? You're too distracted.
Because that's next Friday,
that's
and
next
that's not
Friday.
now.
You don't plan and schedule.
No,
it's like
skin checks, things like that. Like I've heard that
Wow.
your life expectancy is lower based on these things.
wow, keep
Up
going.
to 50% of risk of serious car accidents. Driving, you're running late, you're flying around the place. That's me. I'm
Tired.
shocking. 3 times risk of concussions. Up to 6 times risk of suicide attempts and contemplations. Impulsive again and feeling the feelings. Up to 17 to 20% prevalence in jail, which that blew me away when they told me that. But it's true because of the risky behaviours and things like that, because you're chasing that dopamine, I guess, that you're not having. 2 times more likely to not complete school because school's just not designed for us. It's hard. You've got to, like, the people that have done well have had to really work their ass off to get there.
Gosh. Well, and that's the other thing too, right? There's people that, for whatever reason, I'm sure you're one of them, you are a hard worker, right? And so you find a way to just meet that deadline, get it done. You get through. People think, you did, like, I hate the first question they ask is, did you have bad grades at school? And I'm like, no, I actually didn't have bad grades at school.
No.
But guess what? I know I was probably working like 10 times harder to get, like, I make maths equations like harder because here's the simple equation for maths. And I've figured out a way to, like, well, this is how you solve that problem. You go here and here and there and there, and then you come back. I remember having to manage like these like budgets for things, and I remember showing it to the accounting department, and they're like,
wow,
you kind of got there.
Yeah.
But did you know you could just press this formula in Excel and you're there in like 2 seconds? I'm like, oh.
Yes.
And I still wouldn't get that.
But you'd never remember that to do that next time.
No.
And see, I've hidden that stuff without even knowing I do that. I've done all of that my whole life. They call it, and I haven't delved enough into it, but it's called masking. You're like masking to fit in. And so you don't always show the workings of this. Like if someone looked at my desktop on my computer and I showed you how I file things, like it's amazing for me, but you would be like, whoa, like where's that go? Like,
oh, man.
You know, it's just, you got to do what's right for you. But yeah, it's crazy. Okay, where else was I here? I said not likely to complete school.
Yeah.
3 times likely to underachieve, 40% more likely to be unemployed. So this is obviously the bad stuff. 3 times more likely to be addicted to nicotine, 2 times more likely to be alcoholics. Up to 3 times more likely to have SUD. I don't know what that is. I should have looked that up.
It's probably not that nice.
Up to 6 times more likely to have a teenage pregnancy.
Wow.
3 times victims of violent crimes, 2 times more likely to be victims of sexual crimes. Isn't that harsh? But that's the reality. That's a study that they've done. And, you know, when I got diagnosed, the guy said to me, the doctor said to me, I'm going to paint this picture. I don't want you to take it the wrong way, but I want to just say, let me just sort of explain, looking at you, this is how I would imagine you have been brought up. And he said all these things like, and it was all the scaffolding that's happened around me to make me be able to achieve, like mum. He said, you know, you probably went to a private school. You probably had both parents at home. You probably had your mum or your dad was really hands-on. They were probably very strict to keep you in order so you weren't going to be rebellious because you've got tendencies to be rebellious being like this. Everything he said, I was like, yep. And he said, I don't mean to like judge you, but imagine if you didn't, think of yourself and imagine if you didn't have all of those things.
Any of that support network around
would you have got your assignments in on time? Would you have turned up to school on time? Would you have had your clothes?
Wow.
Like he said, imagine if your parents weren't as
that wonderful parents.
Yep. And he said, you know, then people end up becoming addicted to things, then addiction creates crime. You know, he said that, and he was the first one that said to me, I think half of our prison system is undiagnosed ADHD. And I'm the other side where I've been able to be this high achiever, but there is another whole side.
Wow, we could go somewhere. The whole idea of putting people in prison frustrates me, and that's another episode of Justice Matters. I do have a great episode on Justice Matters where I talk to somebody who helps people that come out of the prison system. And this is from the States, which has 25% of the world's incarcerated is in one country, the United States. But when I think about, you know, those statistics and what we're saying is you don't belong in society because of the way you're behaving.
Yep. You're being told you're naughty.
Yours is bad. There's one way to do things. And again, this is not to excuse the many forms of crime that people do to hurt and harm society. But is the solution just putting them in behind bars and saying, we're going to block you off of society. Like, there's so many. Again, another episode, reformative justice. How do we see people as valued and maybe recognize, okay, how did this person get here?
How did we get here?
And how do we make sure we don't see them as a terrible person? Take responsibility for their actions, yes, but let's see how we got there and maybe what we could do to reform somebody.
That's it.
Rather than to just, simply punish them.
Yeah. And pick it up early. That's the thing. Like I don't know what the statistics are, but there's another saying that's like before kids that with ADHD are 10 years old, they've heard it's a really high number of negative feedback, comments about their behaviour or what they're doing and why can't you just and blah, 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 than everybody else. And so for me, it's the let's pick it up. So no kid's just going to be naughty because like there's something's happening. What's happening for that kid? But, if your kid's at school and they think that they can't hear properly or they're not seeing properly, you just go and get tested. But it's not like that with school at the moment. I don't think they're actually allowed to say, I think your kid might have this going on. Yeah. They kind of got a hint towards you to make your own decision about it.
And a lot of parents, I guess shy away from the thought that, my child's got autism or my child has this. The stigma associated with it has been there. That's like, you're not smart or your EQ's low or this is it's like.
And then they've got to be able to advocate for themselves. So, my daughter has ADHD, which we found out together. And when, I was so out there with Meg and finding out and reading everything, and I forget that she doesn't know how to go, this is what I have. And I've tried and tell her as much about it as I can. But then she had things at school where, not bad stigma-y things, but stuff that she could have just probably stood up for herself, but she didn't really know how to. So that's what we've had to be coaching on. And even now, I don't stand up for myself as much as I should because I don't always know what the right thing to say is either.
I love though that she has an example of someone to be like, you know what, whether it's hard for kids as they develop to process these diagnosis and what does that even mean for them? Do they even need to know? Like, how much do they really need to know about stuff? What they need is just the awareness of us as parents to be able to help them grow and create the space and create the structure.
But they've got to advocate for themselves, I swear. Like, she went on camp and we didn't tell anyone then because she didn't want to tell anyone. And I didn't know when kids go on camp, the normal teachers are sort of there, but they play a background role in camp. And there's like a camp leaders and the people that run the camp run all the activities and do all the things. And, she's off with the fairies, like, looking at whatever she was doing and was late because, or whatever it was. And she got punished. Like, she got in trouble and got, told in front of everyone, you've ruined this. And she came home, had the worst time. And the psychologist, we talked about it, she sat there, it was awful to watch, the psychologist with your child push the tissue box across the table while they're sobbing about stuff. And she was like, you needed to tell them, but you didn't know that. Like, you need to be able to say, this has happened for me now, or this is the reason I'm late, but she didn't then. But we've learnt now, she kind of does need to know what it is, what's good, what's bad.
That's so good. It's like there has to be a meeting in the middle, right?
To stand up
there
and
has
go.
to be an awareness of the society and community to be like, hey, look, don't just judge a child for them. Like, we live in a society, there could be a reason, let me assume that. But then we need to empower people to advocate for themselves. Like you're doing for you.
And let me just tell you before we, I know you have to wrap it all up and everything.
Have to wrap it up. I'm just thinking of our poor boys out there.
I know.
The story of our lives, right? We're just having a great time and our kids are out there.
They're like best friends out there now.
I'm sure they are.
But I didn't want to end on negativity, so I just wanted to say I've only written a few of these. There's like 10 things here, but these are some 20 of the things that we have, which I've already mentioned is hyperfocus. Very resilient because, you've had the pushback, you've had to, my kids have had to turn up.
People tell you how many times, you can't do that, you shouldn't do this, why are you doing that? Yeah.
Yeah. Creativity, good conversational skills, spontaneity, abundant energy, and great problem solving. So there's a whole lot more, but they were just some ones that I quickly wrote down there before I came in because There is a great side of it.
There is a time in society, in the world, when we're facing existential crisis like climate change, and we're facing, what I think is going to be the greatest challenge to society as we move forward is human migration, and how do we deal with, because of climate change, how do we deal with the movement of people across borders? And if there isn't a group of people that we need to kind of elevate and tap on the shoulders, is it not those?
It totally is.
With ADHD.
The movers and shakers of the world.
I think that's amazing. So what would be your advice then to those that either might, let's say to the community out there, what would you say, hey, this is what, when you find out someone has ADHD, or if you think your child has ADHD, is there a piece of advice that you would say, I would encourage you to be XYZ? What would it be?
I would say I would encourage you to just ask them. Probably that would probably be if you're a teacher, or you're a tutor, or a tennis coach, or you're the neighbour next door, and you know that kid's got ADHD. The mum might have mentioned it. Just ask, tell me about it. How is that for you? Because it's different for everybody. And if there's anything that you can do to help, or what's going to make it better for you. And if it's someone close to you, like I know the mums and dads are going to go read all the books, but the next people over, the cousins or the, your
aunts, uncles,
all
neighbours,
of that, they're not going to go read all the books. So I guess the more that people can just be open to it and not just think, oh, it's just the hyperactive little boys, or it's just you need to focus. Just being a bit open to, let's find out what it is for them, and being a little bit more sensitive to things, because I get offended often with things. People will, once I've been vulnerable and told you I've got it, now I feel like some people will use it against me, and I'm like, God, I wish I never told you that.
Wow, so true.
And because they don't know about it. They just think they know.
Yeah, and they automatically say, oh, you've acknowledged that. Yeah, there's a good reason why we shouldn't give you this role, or there's a good reason. Suddenly, it's used against you, and they haven't read that. Oh, we're missing out on a chief problem solver, a chief creative director. Like
I seriously, if it was on a job interview, I wouldn't put it down, and that's got to change. So I'm still illustrating my books. I've got 2 of them, and that's for that reason. Like, it's not your mum and dad book that you're going to delve in and get all of the facts. It's both of them are light, like it won't take you long to read, but it'll give you it'll sort of.
So good.
Yeah, it's like all the little things I encountered. I tried to make sure in that first year, before I knew too much yet, while I was learning, I was writing down all the things that were coming at me, like, oh, she'll grow out of it, or you'll grow out of it, or all the things in it. I've learned now that there's lots of little things that, I know. And if I could have just given that to someone or read it myself at the start, it would be great. So I think there's nothing much like that out there. And that's why I'm like, yet again, ADHD, I'll create it. I'll just make one then.
I love it. How do people get it? How do people find out? How do people...
It'll be on Distracted once I've got it.
Which is
ready.
A website?
Yes, distracted.org, but the Distracted doesn't have an ED. It's just distract, and then I didn't put the E. It's just the D.
Distract.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll make sure it's in show notes. .org?
Yeah, .org. Yeah.
Lucky you getting the .org. We have... that they can come to, if you're on the Gold Coast or in Brisbane or in Byron Bay, and you want to make the trip up to the Goldie or down or Toowoomba, wherever you might be in the region, and you it's well worth the trip to the Gold Coast. Everyone loves the Gold Coast, and come on a Wednesday and hang out at once a month, right?
Yeah, it's on the first Wednesday of the month. So not January coming, because it's
for obvious
it's
reasons.
Very
Everyone's
early.
Away.
Yes, but otherwise it's the first Wednesday of the month, and it's a Miami Marquetta, so you can go and get yummy food. You can bring it in. It's quite casual, but you learn a lot. I've learned so much, and the amount of people that have come along and have gone in that last year I've been doing that have said, I came along, had an inkling, I've been diagnosed and my life's changed so much.
It's a beautiful community. I've met so many wonderful people there, even that I've chatted with. I saw them outside. I'm like, hey, I saw you at that event. And suddenly we've got this thing in common. And it's like, yay. I am so thankful that you would come in. And I love that it fits so well in with Justice. It fits because this is talking about systems. It's talking about creating a society that is just and fair and equitable and creating a place where we all belong.
We belong. And, you know, when you asked me, I was like, the thing again, hang on a second, you know, is this going to fit? And it was like, yeah, this is exactly what you're talking about. I know it's different to the norm things, but it's exactly the same as well. So thank you for doing this and then having me come and talk.
I'm so excited. Well, we got to turn the mics off and start working on a collab or rescue our our boys are probably
and go, they've already got it sorted.
They've chuffed off. They're probably playing football down the road or something like that. Anyways,
thank you
so much.
Well,
you're the best. We'll catch up around the corner very soon.
Thank you.
Oh, it's so hard to stop. Hey, so this was happening. I have to tell you this story. Before I got here, I was listening to this. You know, there's Rethinking by Adam Grant. It's a podcast. Adam Grant's great.
I'll have to put that in my notes.
Adam Grant's got a really good podcast, Rethinking. Anyways, put that in your notes.
I will right now.
Do it now.
Because otherwise I'll be texting you later. What was that podcast?
And it's he has this relationship one on. It's a bit strange, but they were talking about how in relationships and conflict and talking, like it's good to kind of like, hey, just so you know, this is a trigger point for me. And it was, as you were talking about before, like, you know, there's these things that I get triggered on that make me really upset really quickly.
Yeah.
And we all have them. And I realized how directly linked it was to, one, my behavior as a child and how I was suppressed in my free thinking and AD, whatever it is. Because I'll have this idea and I'll, you know, of course I married someone's very opposite to me because that's what you do.
It's needed.
Imagine
if you and I were married.
Oh, God, that would just be like chaos.
Funny.
It's so funny because what I would do, I see even with my parents, I would tell them something and my mum, God bless her heart, probably just was like, oh, God, this is how I have to tell you where this is really going to go wrong.
Yeah.
Like, your idea's great. And it's like, I'm drawing this line for you. And she's just like, that's going off the cliff.
Yeah.
And like, no, it comes around.
It comes back here.
And it goes there.
Oh,
and you've got to see, like, just stay with me on this idea. Like, I know, like, I'm just telling you right now, like, it was this idea of, like, changing my whole garage into a podcast studio / candle warehouse, like, all this thing. And she's already said, you know, we're renting, you know, this, blah, 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 you know, this. And it's like, that's when it just infuriates me. It's like, stop.
Yeah.
It's like, you've hit my trigger. And I was able to, like, use what I listened. All I've heard my whole life is why you can't do this and why this isn't a good idea.
Yep.
Because, like, I'm in another world. Yes. And I'm like, I'm in another world right now and you've shut me down before I even got a quarter of the way into sharing my idea with you.
Yeah.
You're against it.
Yeah.
And you're not for it. I have this in board meetings. There's nothing worse.
Live my life like it.
For me, it's like, can we talk about, yes, you can cut up my idea to pieces. I'm happy with that. But if you're with me on how do we get to the yes, how do we get to a yes, or let me help understand where are you trying to go with that, and let's get there rather than, oh, I see all the risks with that. Oh, I see this is terrible.
Yeah.
This is when
people would never do anything, and that's why with ADHD people do stuff. Look at it's Richard Branson is the guy who. He couldn't get a flight. It was like he was trying to go somewhere like on the holidays or whatever, and they'd shut it down and maybe whatever it was, snow or whatever it was, nothing was flying, he couldn't go. And he ended up buying a plane and got someone to fly it, and it's how he started his first, because he gathered around that airport and went like, I need 50 people to get on this plane with me because
I got to get there.
I'm
going.
And he bloody did it. And then it was some sort of really risky thing. And he I don't know what money he outlaid, but he got his money back because he needed 20 people or whatever. Yeah. And then I think
you find a solution.
He started an airline from that.
That's what problem solving is.
Like people would have told him, you're insane. But he's like, I want to do that and I'm going to do it. And, yeah, I love it. My husband shakes his head at me all the time, like the whole...
And I feel their pain.
Same.
Because how can they, like, honestly, it's exhausting living with us.
Yeah, it? And another idea for them not to go at you.
I know. But it's exhausting. I say that. My wife's a saint.
Yeah.
She isn't negative Nancy at all. She's sweet, beautiful Sarah. It's just there's been, again, there's the trigger, right? And it's like, if we could just be patient with
just
people.
Listen, hear
just
me.
listen.
Yeah.
I loved how you answered that with your question of like, what would you say? It's like, be curious. Ask them how it feels for them because it isn't all the same.
So different.
I mean, as much as we share things in common.
We're very similar in how we are, but having Distracted has shown me there's people struggling out there and they'll say to me, I'm not like you. I couldn't do this. And it's like, I only know how I am. And so for me, I am a little bit like, it's good for me most of the time. It is a bit of a superpower. But then I see people that they're not doing so well. And like all those stats, it's like, wow. And that's even more so. You can't just say everybody's like this or everyone's like that because we're not.
Well, the good thing is the community is big enough for one person says in a Q&A, which I love about the Q&A format, like one person says something and there's probably a couple of other people that are like, hey, yeah, that's right. Me. I don't relate to what that person's saying on the stage, but I relate to what they're saying.
Yeah. And then other people will say, oh my gosh, so much about me. Like I've been trying to be, I don't want to go there and be, everything's sunshine roses. Like I've been saying, when we're talking about getting out the door to go to school in the mornings, and people are asking, how can I get my kid out dressed on time? They've got ADHD. They're a parent talking about it. And they're saying things like, well, you would lay their clothes out on their floor the night before. And then I have to pipe up and go, you know what my kid's dealing with? She's got ADHD as well, but her mum does. So her clothes are never going to be laid out on her floor. She's probably going through 4 baskets of clean washing in 4 different rooms to find a sock in that one, a shirt in that one, because I've not put it away yet. Because this week I had lots of stuff going on. Maybe next week I could be amazing. There's no consistency. I'm not in some sort of routine that, every Monday I'm doing this for them. Like my kids have had to really, buckle in and help me, help them and help each other.
I think, there's so much to talk about this. I think it's the challenge of the way society wants and views productivity and getting things done as well. Like if you can create a system that's so predictable and so we're just gonna be productive and get things done, and it's like, who wants to live in that world?
Yeah. No. Oh, it's just.
Do you know what I mean? It's like when the American corporate workforce decided we're going to build these high rises and we're going to have cubicles in offices and we're going to be so productive and look how amazing this is. And it's like, where's that led us to?
Yeah.
Like 40 to 60% vacancy now in office building space in Manhattan alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Open plan offices. It's just not okay. Yeah. There's a lot of that. And, if I was to write down every day what I achieve, people would go, it's not until someone comes to stay, like when Mum used to come and stay, that I'd notice Mum would be kind of sometimes just standing, just watching, and I'd go, oh, that's right, like because Mum's waiting for me to sit down and have a cup of tea. Like I don't sit down and have a cup of tea.
You're doing a podcast and having
a cup of that's tea. Right. I'm eating breakfast standing up. I don't stop. And the thing is, I do a lot in the day, but that's just how it is for me, but it's chaos. It's not planned that the washing gets done today and gets hung up and put in the cupboards. That's not happening. But there's this happens and then that leads on to that and that. And yeah, it is. For someone who's thinking linear, I would be
It drives them
making
crazy.
them insane.
I remember, when I do I'm starting Just Travel, hence plug for Just Travel Co. A travel company that takes people on just trips and immersive cultural experiences.
Amazing.
It's really cool. Again, another side thing that we all love to do. People would either love going on a trip with me. Like, it's designed that every day there's going to be things in the itinerary that we have not told you about.
Yeah.
That is just going to be like,
because you thought about the night before.
This was because I thought about it the night before. Probably. No, there's going to be like 500 things that aren't in the itinerary that people are like, so when are we going to be going to this thing? And I'm like, just trust me, it's in here, and it's going to be it's going to blow your mind. Yeah, but I need to kind of know. I need to know what I'm expecting. I need to make sure that this is going to be what I expected it to be. I was like, I'm like, sorry, but like, yes, here's the hotel we're staying at, and you can look it up and see how TripAdvisor says about it, and feel comfortable about whatever you want to feel about it, or not, or you can be like, you know what, I'm Uber driving at night, so most
imagine the people you're meeting.
Dude, do you know what I love so much about this job? I start usually at about 9, 10 o'clock at night. I get in the car, kids are in bed, and I'm like, I have no idea who I'm going to pick up.
Yeah,
I have no
that's
idea.
terrifying for me a bit too.
I have no idea where I'm going to go.
Yeah,
it is like lucky
amazing.
Surprise.
Yeah,
put your hand in lucky surprise gift every 15, 20 minutes when I pick up somebody.
Yeah,
and the conversation is like, so I guess maybe this isn't a great promo for Just Travel Co. But because if you like the nice, clean, smooth, predictable itinerary, but if you want to experience the wonder and the beauty and the you're just going to be like, oh, it didn't say we were going to wake up at 6 a.m. If you wanted to. You could sleep in if you want to, but there's an option to go surfing with the locals at Herzliya Beach in Tel Aviv and get your photo taken with a professional photographer. Yeah. And you get to show people what you were doing that day. That's not in the itinerary, but and the day hasn't even begun, and it's an option.
See, I love it. Yeah, that's amazing. But you've got to be ready to saddle yourself in for that.
And it's not for everyone too.
No,
and that's where we can't assume everyone has to then do our way.
No. That's right. But we can be a little bit like that. I've always been, from my sisters, always like, it's your way or the highway, Amanda. So I think
because we're going to do it either way or not. We'll find a way to
it's going to happen.
You know what? You said I can't do it. You've just told me.
Yep.
Figure out how you can do it. It's like when someone says, you can't fit that in. I'm like, oh, yes, you can. Trust me. I'll be fitting that in.
Yep.
You'll be sleeping and I'll be doing it.
I'm doing it. That's right. I know. You told me a while back I needed to sleep more. I think it was, you did. Yeah, you did. And I was like, I'm going to start trying to go to bed earlier because you changed, because you're naturally like me, night owl, but you've changed yourself.
I did until I started Uber driving about a month ago, because now
you're up there. Yeah, okay.
Usually I'd be going to bed. I literally crash and go to bed.
Yeah, because you get up early though.
Because I'm up at
you're doing all the
4
things.
4 o'clock in the morning, yeah.
And see, I'm such a sleeper in, or I stay up late. And that's the golden hour for me. At night when everybody's in bed, if I get myself started into something, then I can just be up. But I have really tried to pull it back and go to bed earlier. But I must say my productivity of I'm getting in, getting it done all day and then all night, it's not there. But it's important to go and get a good night's sleep. So I'm grateful I have changed.
It's important because you become a better, nicer person, I think, when you've had a good night's sleep.
Good night's sleep, yeah.
I'm just a bit of a
I don't
grouch.
need 8 hours though.
No.
Totally don't need 8 hours. But yeah, I have been going to bed earlier. So thank you.
Thanks for making it to the end of another episode of Justice Matters with Tim Buxton. It is an immense privilege to share these conversations and inspiring people with you. To learn more about how you can get involved or learn more about today's guest, head on over to the show notes or episode description. This podcast was produced by the master himself, Jose Biotto, with just a little bit of help from me. The featured music is the song Turning Over Tables by The Brilliance. Lastly, to my Patreon community out there, thank you so much for your support and generosity. Without you, this podcast would not be possible. If you'd like to become a Patreon and get exclusive access to behind the scenes content, visit patreon.com/Justice Matters and start your Give What You Can monthly contribution today and join me and so many others in creating a world where everyone belongs. Until next time, thank you for subscribing and sharing this podcast with your friends. Justice Matters with Tim Buxton acknowledges and pays respect to the past, present and future traditional custodians and elders of this nation, now known as Australia, and the continuation of cultural, spiritual and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.